Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and being a producer of Wrestle Massacre as well as Inside Movies Galore, I am David Strege, and welcome to Delusions of Grandeur. Enjoy the reviews. I certainly did.
Okay, Dave, that's it. Screw you and your college flunkies. I've had enough of this from you and from everyone else. I know what you guys are trying to do. Break me down, drive me out of the force. Well, it's going to take a hell of a lot more than a lame prank like this to get Curtis Mooney to throw in his badge, so fuck you. Over.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Delusions of Grandeur. I'm your host, David Strege, and here I have another review for you, this time of a film called Brackenmore. And I picked it up not too long ago, maybe about half a year ago. And it is directed by Christopher Kemble and J.P. Davidson. And it's inspired by the writer by the name of Brian Tellis. It's presented by Carrick Lake, Ireland. Because evidently some of the filming locations were set in Ireland, but mostly it was filmed in a studio in UK, London, I guess. And we have the story of a young woman who evidently has an uncle who has just recently died. And also, we see in the very beginning how evidently her parents ultimately are in a car crash of some sort. And this young woman goes by the name of Kate. And from what I understand, in the very beginning, we see her with a boyfriend by the name of Elaine, and ultimately she gets a letter saying that her uncle has died and left her some kind of an estate. So she goes to Brackenmore, and she arrives at what is supposedly a guest house in town, and she's invited in, even though supposedly the guest house isn't supposed to be accepting any guests. And she's invited in by Irene, who was played by Margaret O'Sullivan, and evidently she has a husband. And evidently that dinner conversation with Stu was a very awkward one. They were asking questions about how long she'd be in town, things of that nature. And supposedly Kate had grown up somewhere around here too. So ultimately she ends up going and seeing the solicitor, who seems to just want to waste time. And he eventually takes her to the place of residence that her uncle had owned. But before he takes her there, he does tell her the circumstances of her uncle's death, because apparently he took his own life. And yet we see flashbacks of this supposed incident, where he was actually hung with some masked characters around him and fire and all that jazz. So, uh, so ultimately, once the solicitor takes her to the home, there seems to be a young man by the name of Tom. And Tom is played by DJ McGrath. Um, and as this film was filmed in 2016 through um, Upstream Films. Let me just say something about this film. This film has gone through several working titles. The first one being The Devil Knows You're Here. The second one being We Do What We Must. The third one being Banshee Beyond the Lake. The worldwide working title was Banshee, and then evidently it eventually became Brackenmore. So Tom, DJ McGrath, plays this character, I think, to a T. Again, this is, well, maybe not again, but this is kind of a slow burn. There's a story that unfolds as we see her go through some of the photographs in the home, and evidently there are all these photos of her family and whatnot when she was very young. And there's one photo in particular that is evidently of her, and she does not remember any of this. So while she is living within the guest house, and after this Tom ends up befriending her, and he ends up inviting her to a festival where she smokes a festival herb. And then later on that night, supposedly a young kid in a mask tries to kill her. And the local policeman, whoever he is, comes down on her really harsh, telling her, "Oh, so you come from London, and you smoked a festival root, and you invited this young man in with your wiles," and and he basically pointed the finger at her, that it was her fault or something like that, because supposedly he knew the kid. It was, it's kind of a Wicker Man kind of a vibe, with this small town, the secrets that they hold, and what ends up happening is that I think that this town thinks that they're gonna sacrifice her, and supposedly she was chosen. She has a destiny, and I guess I should say spoiler alert. Before I go much more into detail, because apparently there's a reason why she left her boyfriend, even though she's been calling him at least twice while she's on this trip, and she doesn't get a hold of him. But apparently back at home, he apparently had an affair, and she's not okay with it, which is why she went ahead and went on her own on this trip. And The young man Tom, he's an interesting character. He seems very gentle. He seems very friendly, and he seems like the kind of person that you'd want to know on a daily a given life. Because it seems like the two get kind of chummy, kind of close, and then suddenly he betrays her. Um, you know, town cult and everything. And ultimately, this is kind of like what happens when you push a spiritual being into a corner, and let loose the monster that is in all of us. I mean, it's like if you mixed Carrie with the Wicker Man. I really like the scenery in this of film. I know that it's around Carrick Lake, because Carrick Lake actually presents this film. Um, and I love that cover because in the very end of the film, the actress who plays Kate, um, Sophie, yeah, Sophie Hopkins. Which surprised me about some of her background, Sophie Hopkins, is that she was actually three different characters portraying on a documentary that I used to watch for quite some time. That was hosted by John Noble. Dark Matters, Twisted something or other. It was a really cool show, and so yeah. I know that this isn't going to be a film for everyone because it was very slow. It was definitely a twist in the very end. How it came about. I don't really want to say too much, but it definitely built up. It reminds me similarly to like Midsommar, or something of that nature. Except it didn't go as bizarre as Midsommar, which is a more recent film. But as the slow pace kind of reminded me how slow The Witch was, or something on that nature. It was definitely trying to be artsy, um, that cinematic feel for, and it was definitely a lower budget. So, I don't know why, but I somewhat enjoyed it, especially towards the end. I mean, I'll watch it over for that like last like 30 minutes of of film, because what they do to the boyfriend, and what they make her watch, what they make her go through is, and then the turnabout. That was freaking awesome. But on the other hand, it was fairly slow, and it almost bored me at first. The first time I watched it, so it has to be careful how films have to be careful how much time you space out between when you're trying to dramatize something. You need more action, a more built up tension, and I wasn't sure if this film entirely delivered on it. But I wanted to put my thoughts out there on this film. I loved the scenery. I loved the views of the lake. Um, and it just looked like everything was natural. I don't really think there were really much special effects that were used. So, well, in any case, hopefully you enjoyed my ramblings on this film. Like and subscribe to my page if you have not. Definitely check out some more cool stuff. I will definitely have some more films to talk about. I realized the first time around when I tried to upload my original thoughts on this film, they did not record. So going on about it again, and hopefully you like my interpretation of the film, and let me know down in the comments what you thought of the film if you come across it. So thank you so much. Enjoy.
You were good, kid, real good. But as long as I'm around, you'll always be second best, see?